Europe is changing, and that includes Ireland. Following the Arab Spring in 2011, a series of refugee and migrant crises have impacted the European continent, leaving a lasting mark on the politics and ideologies of the region. Beginning with the election of Donald Trump and the Brexit vote in 2016, a wave of right-wing populism and anti-migration sentiment has swept across the West and across European countries in particular. We have seen Western European nations and Scandinavian countries, places that had traditionally been founded on and thrived on the philosophy of liberalism, shift towards their strongest and anti-immigration positioning of the modern era. From the Arab Spring to the Syrian War and now the Russia-Ukraine war, mass displacement of people across the MENA and Eastern European regions have led to immigration issues across Europe, putting immense strain on public services and leading to a backlash amongst local populations who have seen the demographics of their communities change rapidly. This has all led to a comprehensive reform of EU migration and asylum policy which passed in 2024. It's important to note that political figures like Viktor Orban of Hungary or Geert Wilders of the Netherlands are not winning elections because Europe has suddenly become racist. It is the natural ebbs and flow of immigration discourse and policy. When several events cause mass migration over such a short period of time, especially when combined with the increased cost of living in European nations, anti-immigration sentiment is bound to rise, particularly amongst working-class communities that are the most impacted. We saw this in Sweden. The anti-immigration Sweden Democrats Party won a majority in the 2022 elections in a country that has historically been a bulwark against right-wing and conservative politics. The result would have been unthinkable a decade prior. Now Ireland has seen surges in anti-immigration protests, demonstrations, and even riots, as a similar scenario seems to be playing out on the Emerald Isle. So what exactly is going on? Is Ireland the next domino to fall in the wave of right-wing populism sweeping the continent? Is Ireland set to become the next Sweden? Well, to know if Ireland really is the next Sweden, we have to look at how it was before this shift. Sweden was typically the most welcoming country in Europe for immigrants, offering better public services and social protections to its citizens than anywhere else. That's why they were always top of the list for incoming migrants. The benefits offered by the Swedish government allowed vibrant communities of foreign nationals to develop, which in turn encouraged more immigration from those countries. A similar scenario played out in Ireland. Apart from immigrants from England, Wales, and other neighboring countries, in the nearby UK, Ireland's Polish expat community was the most prominent. For the longest time, Polish nationals in Ireland were a shining example of a successful expat community. They are still by far the largest foreign-born population in Ireland outside of immigrants from the UK, with around 100,000 people. Following Poland's accession to the EU in 2003, tens of thousands of Polish citizens made their way to Ireland and quickly established themselves as the country's largest minority population. Polish grocery stores began to open up in every major urban center, offering this new community delicacies from their homeland. While Ireland was not wealthy enough to offer the same benefits Sweden could, they were one of the first EU countries to open their labor market after Poland's accession to the EU, and most new arrivals came to find work which helped them support their families back home. In recent years, Polish expats have begun returning to Poland now that their home country has had 20 years of EU membership, which has revitalized their economy through trade partnerships and industrialization. In addition to a booming defense industry, now that Poland is a vital player in NATO defensive posturing in Eastern Europe, there is even a joke amongst locals that Irish citizens will now have to go to Poland to live a more prosperous life due to the improved economy and superior cost of living. So what does the experience of Polish people in Ireland tell us then? For the most part, it shows us that Ireland is a welcoming nation for immigrants, and with the now thriving Brazilian and Indian expat community, this is still the case. But there are recent signs that this is changing. So what's happening? With the catastrophic housing crisis leaving a big part of the Irish population unable to find affordable housing, the already weak social protections became even more obvious. The COVID-19 pandemic then made things much worse because the minimal construction taking place was stalled. Next, the Ukraine war saw Ireland accept massive amounts of refugees over a short period of time, nearly all of whom received free housing. With the number of immigrants housed by the state jumping from 7,500 in 2021 to 73,000 in 2022, a near tenfold increase, tensions began to boil over. The stabbing incident, where 3 young children were attacked by a man with a knife, was the final straw. Despite having lived in the country for many years, the attacker, being an Algerian national, caused a swift anti-migrant backlash and triggered the November 2023 Dublin riots, a clear low point in the recent political history of the country. For the night, Dublin was basically set ablaze, with shops looted, windows smashed, and cars set on fire throughout the city center and surrounding areas. The whole event was blamed on a, quote, far-right faction. While from the outside it may seem that all anti-immigration protests are just racist right-wing nationalists who want some kind of ethically or culturally pure society, that's actually not the case. Of course, those voices exist and can sometimes be the loudest, but in reality, anti-immigration protests are more strongly correlated with the success of a country's economy and government initiatives. When social protections provide material benefits for citizens, and there is enough to go around, so to speak, xenophobia is generally not an issue, regardless of who is coming into the country. Unfortunately, Irish politics have a history of being highly dysfunctional. And when you couple that with the rapid influx of refugees who benefit from the government protections that local working class communities feel they lack, resentment begins to build. To make matters worse, instead of placating the rioters and adjusting the asylum policy in a country with no available housing, the administration quickly pushed through an updated hate speech bill as part of the Taoiseach Prime Minister Leo Varadkar's vow to get those responsible for the carnage unleashed in Dublin that night. Regardless of your views on free speech rights or immigration, when a government refuses to engage with protesters' concerns, at least rhetorically, and instead demonizes them, it often makes things worse, not better. Regardless, the 2023 riots marked a similar shift in Ireland and the one we saw in Sweden. But is Ireland really that much different than it was in the 2000s when Polish migrants were thriving? Actually, no, it's pretty similar. Despite all the turmoil and unrest surrounding the country's asylum policy, 2024 research on all 27 EU countries from the Economic and Social Research Institute found that Ireland's positive attitudes towards immigration was still above the EU average. Ironically, Sweden still ranked number 1 in the category. Between June and November 2023, positivity towards both EU and non-EU immigration did fall by 6%, which reflects the events at the time. However, Ireland still ranks among the most welcoming countries in Europe for immigrants. According to the study, people who felt the economic situation and cost of living crisis were the most important issues facing Ireland or the world had less positive attitudes towards immigration in general. And if you have one takeaway from this video, this should be it. Even though wars and famine have caused numerous migrant crises in recent years across Europe, countries like Ireland and Sweden remain excellent destinations for asylum seekers and economic migrants. However, if the current domestic issues relating to housing, food prices, and other social protections continue to get worse, this will erode the public's trust in government. When the people don't trust the government, that is when right-wing populist parties step in to offer platitudes like stronger immigration policies or better living standards for everyone. And when those parties win, that's when a true shift begins to take place. Europe has seen this wave coming since 2016, and the EU policy decisions over the next 5 years will determine whether the places like Ireland and Sweden were just lashing out against the migrant crisis, or if there actually has been a fundamental change in the ideology of the citizens. So the changes in Ireland and Sweden, while they haven't made these countries unrecognizable compared to their former selves, should be taken as a warning. Right-wing populism, anti-globalist attitudes, and anti-immigration movements will die out if EU and domestic government policies provide enough benefits for its citizens. If not, they will grow and grow until one day they're the dominant force in Ireland, Sweden, and maybe all of Europe, making recent events seem like just the tip of the iceberg. What are your thoughts about it? Do you think Ireland will become another Sweden? Let us know in the comments section. And if you're interested to know about how Denmark resolved immigration crises, please check out our next video right here on the screen. For more such videos and hot topics, stay tuned and please don't forget to subscribe.